Well, let's continue the conversation with historian Professor Musa Khulekani Xulu, the founder of Indonsa Yesizwe Think Tank, which focuses on the regeneration of the Zulu Kingdom and other kingdoms in South Africa, Africa and the diaspora through the promotion of traditional and indigenous knowledge. A very good evening to you, Professor Xulu. Thank you so much for speaking to us once again. So I know you and I have had a conversation around this and your views have been very clear, but for those who don't have or haven't had the benefit thereof. So the Amazulu King Misuzulu kaZwelithini to be officially crowned in October in a government program. How important or significant is this aspect of the ceremony?
Well, it's a very important ceremony. Thanks, my sister and your viewers. It's a very important ceremony because what needs to happen now is that the certificate, which was signed in March 2022, will be officially handed over to the king on the 29th of October 2022. But it does not mean that he has been illegally acting as a king. He was a king on the day he was declared in 2021 on May the 14th. And then, of course, you know, there's a little bit of different systems that come to work. The traditional Zulu system says a king dies, a new king comes on board. There's no vacuum that is allowed. But then, of course, since 1873, Sir Theophilus Shepstone introduced a system that the government must also acknowledge or recognize a king of Zulu. So this is a colonial system which the president, of course, because he's sitting on the same system, on the same platform that was there before, he will have to perform on the 29th of October. But in terms of Zulu traditions and culture, the king is already on the throne.
And I want to talk a little bit more about that certificate. So as you mentioned, he's going to be given that certificate officially that declares him king. Is there any danger of this process being halted or interdicted given the various contestations we've spoken of to the position? At the time, there was one contestation and now there are two brothers who are contesting the position.
No, it's impossible to contest this. Let me tell you, Prince Mangosuthu can never be a king of Zulu. He knows that, and he should be knowing. His mother never married to the Zulu Kingdom. Even if she had married, she came from a minor clan. When the queen came from Swaziland, from one kingdom to another, and when the Zulu nation paid lobola cattle, more than 300 of them to the Swazi Kingdom, the deal was sealed. So Prince Mangosuthu will remain a prince for the rest of his life. The other one, who comes from KwaDlamahlahla, Buzabazi, I don't know how he came even to think about it. The king on the throne, like they declared King Charles III in England, is undisputed and is the only one until God decides on what to do with him. A king is born. A king is not does not come out of meetings and all those things. You know, I've been listening to these people who pretend to be spokespersons of the Zulu royal family. We know that some of them have just come from nowhere. It's all a chance making. The real story is this: King Misuzulu kaZwelithini is the king of the Zulu nation, and the president followed the law, both the 2003 Act and the 2019 Act, to look at what was submitted, and then based on that, declared him the king. So they can go to any court, but you know, when they have all these monies from entrepreneurs running around, they can then go to courts and so on. It's just distractions. It won't come to anything, really. So these guys need to be just, basically speaking, not taken seriously.
Now, at some point, as you've mentioned, there have been various press conferences, and some of them you even went as far as saying Queen Mantombi, Dlamini, her lobola, they were not consulted, or they were not part of it, or they're surprised. It just seems like a long sordid story behind it. The impact that this is having on the unity of the kingdom of Amazulu, is it significant, or, as you say, some of these people ought not even to be recognized, but for onlookers it's very difficult to decipher who is legitimate or not?
The one who is legitimate is the one with the certificate from the president.
No, I'm talking about those who are speaking on behalf of...
oh, no. They speak, yeah, thank you. No, they speak on behalf of themselves. 7 or 8 of them, maybe 20 or 10, 15. But the fact of the matter is that the Act, the 2003 Act, prescribes that you should follow your customs in advising the president on the issues of succession. The Zulu custom is undisputed on this issue. And it's very clear that once anyone that comes from a royal family marries whoever is the king or chief, that one is the one that will give birth to the next king or chief. So they can go to any court in the land. They will never win, but I think they're just spin doctoring to make noise. Every time something is coming up that the king has to do, they come up with these stories, and then, of course, for media and all this stuff. But in reality, because we in Indonsa have accumulated and brought together a lot of academics and intellectuals who have studied these things, besides the knowledge that Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has bestowed on the nation, we know that these people are just playing games. It's not going to go anywhere. Look, I arrived at the Zulu Kingdom, at the Royal Palaces in 1988 as a 27-year-old studying ethnomusicology, Zulu Mahuibo songs. These people that are talking on TV now were not there. And all the time I have been there for the past 30-something, 34 years, I've not seen them. They've only come out now because they want to create a dispute of this and that. It's meaningless unless they bring forward the knowledge. Where do they get the knowledge that King Misuzulu is not the rightful king? Okay. They don't have it. They don't have it. Just a talk.
I'd like to hear your opinion on this. I was listening to a commentator saying King Misuzulu's entering of Isibaya, where he was introduced to the ancestors and the Amazulu people as monarch, that ceremony in itself was not imperative to recognizing him as Isilo, that it was just a mere ceremony, as it were. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, becoming a Zulu king is a process that has a lot of events that happen. That entering the kraal, the Isibaya, was one of the many events that he has to go through. You remember, he also had to go out and hunt a lion. He also had to do many other things. It's a build-up. The entering of Isibaya is the coronation in relation to the Zulu traditions. Until 1873, this is how it was. But then, of course, when Sir Theophilus Shepstone came in, and then he said, okay, now you must, because we're under the Queen, so you must be under the Queen. So Theophilus Shepstone, as the representative of Queen Elizabeth, must crown you. But let me tell you this, it's not anyone who can enter a kraal and then it becomes a king. Otherwise, all of us who are looking after our father's cattle and entered kraals many times, we would be kings of this and that. It's a ritual. It's based on the history and traditions. As you saw, when King Charles III was coronated, you go back to many years. In terms of Zulu culture, you go back to 300, 400 years that this has happened. Of course, and then when the new nation was formed by King Shaka in 1816, it became even more embedded. So it's not everyone that you can't just wake up in the morning and decide, I want to go to a kraal. You must first tell us, who is your mother? There's no one that becomes a king when you don't even know who your mother is. And where is she in all these palaces? She's nowhere to be found. So what he does, Makate goes to stay at Nyogeni. Nyogeni was built by the old KwaZulu government. It's not even a part of their inheritance. He sits there and he thinks he's a king there, of course, of him and 3 people.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Professor Musa Khulekani Xulu. He is speaking to us on the latest news, the coronation of King Misuzulu, which has been announced by the Amazulu Prime Minister.